I'm a firm believer if you stick to your values, if you stick to your strategy, if you trust the people you've hired, something good will come out.
Now on the Epicenter of Women's Sports podcast with Karina LeBlanc, two athletes turned executives, one of whom was in the role that I used to have as the Portland Thorns general manager.
As an athlete, you can impact a match in 90 minutes. As a general manager, sporting director, you're lucky if it takes 9 months.
Five-time MLS Cup winner and U.S. men's national team star, Yaffe and the Portland Fire's new GM, Vanja Černivec, who helped lead the WNBA's last expansion team to the playoffs. She will take her international experience and her time as an NBA scout into her new role.
I want to ask a question. Is it so? Is there better than good? Like, I hate the word good, you know. I want to be more efficient. I want to do things great.
Both open up about the challenges of the job and the secrets to winning.
Ultimately, it's not about what you do. It's about how you make people feel.
You really want good human beings that are, you know, people first. I care who you are, not what you do.
I'm so excited about this conversation today because it's almost like the insights of what it takes to be a general manager in a professional league. And having held this position, I'm excited to just sit back and listen and learn and really understand how they want to lead us through this. But most importantly, like, talk about the hot topics and all the things. So tune in. I really think you'll enjoy it. Jeff, Vanja, thanks for joining us on the show today. I think it's going to be exciting where we go. We're going to talk salary caps. We're going to talk hot topics. We're going to talk how you got here. But let's start with a defining moment in your life.
I go first?
I'm going with you first, Vanja.
I feel like there was a lot of them, but the one I have to go with is when I was 12 years old and I found out basketball. I discovered basketball. I was playing all different sports when I was young, and then as soon as I tried out basketball, it just hooked me, and everything else in my life became secondary. And I think from that on, I was basically, looking back, I was privileged to find my passion at 12. You know,
Yeah.
A lot of people still struggle finding what their passion is or what their mission is, but I've had that since I was 12. So that kind of led me through my life and took me to where I am, I guess.
Woo! Go ahead.
I don't know if I can top that one. Always tough to go second in this crowd. I think, obviously, finding football, soccer is a defining moment, but really one of the most defining moments was not making the 94 World Cup team. After going through 2 years of just the mental and physical toll of being in residency and not making the dream that you had anticipated, I think was really a defining moment in terms of what I wanted out of my career and who was going to define it, whether it was going to be somebody else not being selected or it was going to be myself, and how I envisioned my career and my life going.
So at that moment in your life, you probably were like embarrassed, lost, all those things. Or what was that feeling that fueled you to be where you are today?
Well, I think after a few days or weeks of coming to terms with not playing in the biggest sporting event in the world in your home country, 94 was in the U.S., it was understanding that I still had a long pathway in terms of my career, in terms of who I was. And ultimately, the fact that this was one person making a decision about my career, I didn't want to let that define how my career was going to move forward. And that it was really my decision as much as it was somebody else's decision.
Yeah, it worked out. 5 MLS Cups, you know,
Two World Cups.
Yeah, like you talk about like having something fuel you. And then you went into the MLS, you did your thing there, and you've come into Portland, woohoo! The club that I think arguably changed the trajectory of women's soccer. What made you want to do this job at this point in your life?
This was an easy decision. I mean, this connected a lot of dots for me. First of all, I was working in Major League Soccer as the senior vice president for competition and medical. And working in an NGB or working at a league office, there's very little competition. Yeah. You know, you were really doing it for the sport and trying to elevate the sport, and really giving a legacy to players who were in the league at that time or coming into the league. What working in the club does is really fuel that competitive fire. And so I as a former player, that was really critical in terms of what I was looking for in my next position. But I think the fact that we had incredible ownership, that we're committed to investing in a team, from a performance center to just the day-to-day professionalizing the environment, was another dot that was connected. Portland, the success here, the team, the crowd, the community, all of it was connected, all of those dots. So this was something I pursued with a lot of vigor and wanted to make sure that this was something I put everything into.
I love it. And I love game days. I remember the first game day. I'm like, happy first game day, because you live it as an athlete, but then it's a completely different form in this space, because it's almost like once the game starts, you have no control.
Yeah, that's the beauty of what you do. You know, as an athlete, you can impact a match in 90 minutes. Yeah. As a general manager, sporting director, you're lucky if it takes 9 months.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of patience. There's a lot of learning. There's a lot of process. There's a lot of empathy. There's a lot of accountability. There's a lot of things that go into it. But patience is a big one.
Vanja, you have been NBA, WNBA, TD, GM, player, all of the things, right? And then you come to Portland. What led you to good old Portland?
I actually blame my best friend.
That's a good best friend. Thank you, best friend.
So she actually lives in Portland, moved here, I think 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. And as soon as the new franchise was announced here, like 2 minutes later, she called me. I'm like, you have to be the GM. And I'm like, what are you talking about? It was literally probably like 2-3 months into my Valkyries role. And I was just like, that's no way. Like, I'm new in this league. No one knows my name. I just started with the Valkyries. The timing is off. They're going to hire someone in the next 2 months. And then I got a call if I want to throw my name in. And I feel like you said, like all the dots kind of connected. Yeah. Like having my best friend here was definitely a cherry on the cake. But then going through the interview process and getting to know the ownership, their values, how genuine they are, and what inspired me the most is how they want to do things differently. And that's what got me really attracted to the role. So yeah, everything lined up and here I am.
So you said the conversation with the ownership and the vision and how they want to do differently. Do you want to speak a bit more about that?
Sure. I feel like going through different teams and being in the sport industry now for, 15 years, I see like people get stuck in the ways of doing things. Mm-hmm. And it's easy to just rely on, we've been doing this for 20 years. It's good enough, So I want to push the envelope. I want to ask questions. Is it so? Is there better than good? Like, I hate the word good, I want to be more efficient. I want to do things great, and make the environment and the platform for our athletes to shine and thrive. And the same goes for our staff. Like, you cannot be just satisfied with status quo. Mm-hmm. So how can we differentiate ourselves from others in this space?
So let's both talk about differentiating ourselves, because obviously it's so unique to have two GMs, right? Different backgrounds, different sports, but aligned on something almost bigger than ourselves, something where you can actually move the dial in women's sports at a time where women's sports is taking off. So both of you, can you talk a bit about what differentiates us from others from your lens?
I go first? Well, I just got here, so I'm still learning the landscape. So I'm in this phase where I'm learning about people, also people who we interview now, so who I work with, because I think that's key. But what I think is going to separate us, of course, is the practice facility or performance center that we're building. But I'm not talking about the walls and the beautiful furniture that Lisa is, choosing, and all the equipment. But it's the human beings that are going to be there, that are going to cooperate, and what can emerge from that. Like, I always speak 2 + 2 should not be equal 4, should be 8, 10, or whatever. Mm-hmm. Hopefully not going back into minus, right? So it's very hard to right now see exactly what's going to come out of it. Yeah. But I just see positives of our staff interacting, our athletes interacting, and I don't know if you see it differently.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting dichotomy because Vanja's building something from scratch, whereas, the Thorns have been here and been a huge success for the arc of its profession. I mean, for the entire time. I think ultimately it comes down to, do you have the right structure to create success? Do you have the right people? And do you give those people the opportunity to be successful, put them in positions where they can be successful? And that includes the players, that includes the staff. What I think Vanja was alluding to is that our owners are entirely committed to making sure that we're built for success. Mm-hmm. Our vision is to be the #1 women's soccer club in the world. That's an extraordinary vision, and you have to be able to support that through resources, through different commitments. The Performance Center as an example, but really it comes down to giving people the opportunity to thrive.
When you're surrounded by like-minded people, you can do extraordinary things. As you see, I said extraordinary, not good. So you said you didn't like good. So let's dive into the part about the GM job. There's a lot that people know, or they think they know, right? And having sat in that seat, people sometimes think, because I've done fantasy football, I can build a team, right? Or I know a lot about the sports. What have you learned in this position and so far? And what has surprised you? Because I think part of the conversation we want to have is educate our listeners on the insights of what surprised you coming into this role, right? So Jeff, it's been 10 months. Vanja,
10 days.
Yesterday. She came here. But what has surprised you? And in that answer, can you educate our listeners? Because I think it's so important that people understand the complexity of that GM job. I'll go with you first, Jeff.
Okay. Well, people matter. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's what it really comes down to. I don't think that's surprising, but you are not dealing with a paper product. Mm-hmm. On paper, you know who the people are, what their positions are, what the job is. But ultimately, it's not about what you do. It's about how you make people feel. Mm-hmm. And trying to coalesce and collaborate together, I think, is critical, because it's really about the people that you work with having purpose every single day, getting up for a reason. Because if they're getting up to have a paycheck, then there's not a lot of purpose behind that. Mm-hmm. So it's really trying to create a purpose-driven community within the scope of that of what you're building.
So that's the people. How about the salary cap, the managing, the players, the agents? Let's go deep into the job.
Roster management is a huge part of constructing your team, building it for success, ensuring that you have not only short-term success, but long-term success. You can't be built for a season. You have to be built for a number of seasons. And in a cap-compliant league, that's extremely difficult. And so, we put together a recruitment team, a cap team that is trying to recreate that, or at least create and optimize a strategy that gives us long-term success. And ultimately, that's going to be the goal, because in a capped league, you have to find other ways to be creative. You have to create competitive advantage through other means.
When you say cap league, could you expand on that? Because I think some of our listeners are like, yeah, there's a cap. We're not talking about a cap and a Coca-Cola bottle. We're talking about a salary cap.
It's a maximum threshold of spend, mm-hmm. essentially. So you have 3.5, 4 million, 4.5 million, whatever the number is, you have a maximum number that you can spend for every single player on your team.
And how many players?
Anywhere between 22 and 26.
Exactly. So I think it's for our listeners to understand at home is that amount, you have to figure out how to do it, not just short term, but over a 3-4 year period. And you're planning that far ahead while you're looking at managing. You want to look at the age. You want to look at international. All of that's pretty complex.
Yeah, you're trying to create a mix of youth, experience, expense, leaders, followers. So it's really building, and I think what's really critical is building a culture within the dressing room that can be successful over a number of years.
Love it. Vanja, so he had a team and he has to adjust. You are starting from scratch. How do you build from scratch? And then talk a bit about the WNBA. And he's talked about salary cap, the similarities with that, but then the complexity of being a GM in the WNBA.
Yeah, I mean, building from scratch, it also comes with a lot of rules and regulations from the league. So, of course, we're going to have an expansion draft that's going to have 2 pages of rules that people will not understand, but will mostly just know how many players were protected. But there's also, a lot of additional rules in the background that you have to kind of maneuver and figure out the best roster that you can get in the expansion draft. Then normally is followed by the free agency. This year is going to be, a wild one, as you know. Yeah, and then you have the NCAA draft or, the W draft. And this is kind of your 3 pillars of roster construction. Going into it, hopefully we had a head coach by then. You basically kind of figure out the qualities you're looking in the player and, on the court, off the court. And then you just go from there. You stick to your values. And that's how you end up with a roster that kind of is identified with your team or your mission, your values, your goals.
I love it. Let's educate our listeners. So the salary cap and then how many players are on a roster?
12. So just to be clear, after the season, the CBA will be renegotiated. So we're looking at potentially different numbers, different regulations. So as of now, we can have 12 players on a roster.
I won't ask if you want it to go up yet because I won't put in. We'll get to the hot topics.
Okay.
And then when you start to think of building a roster, let's talk about profiles because, I mean, Jeff, I know I'll go with you because you're looking at different profiles and it's not just like every player is different. And then you have to look throughout the different regions in the world and figure out the style of play you want to play. How do you kind of build a roster knowing now? Because if we look at the season, I think there's been 7 changes that we had started a year ago on. Knowing that, you still have the salary cap, but then you also have to think long term. And then I think we have the youngest team in the league. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah.
So how do you, again, going through the complexities of how difficult the job is, yet you have a strategy and you have a plan to literally nail all of that. So you want to talk about it?
Yeah, we wanted to move away from a transactional environment to a more transformational environment. So we really spent several months putting together a philosophy in terms of what our recruitment strategy would be, the type of player we wanted. We wanted somebody to be dynamic and committed and relentless. Those are the types of people that we were looking for. But within each profile, there were core elements of what we were looking for. An attacking player, for example, goal output or goal opportunity. So every position has its own element. And then we can search through data sets in terms of what those elements look like. But ultimately, it comes down to marrying up the data and what you see in the video. There has to be an eye test that matches that data. It'd be a little scary just to sign somebody from what the data is telling you. But we were very deliberate and in terms of creating a roster and percentages around spend for each position. So it is a very intentional philosophy in terms of what our recruitment team is looking for. And then building that out to create competitive advantage in a cap compliant league, I think is critical to success.
And you have a different way also. We've talked a little bit about like looking at it differently because yes, roster size is smaller, but you want to talk a little bit about your vision of building that roster and, you talk about the head coach. Yeah, I think we will have a head coach by that time, but building out that roster with how you are looking at it differently.
Yeah, it's very close to what he was saying, so I don't want to repeat myself, but just for the audience to understand, I'm very high on values and character. In general, in bringing people in on the staff side and player side, you really want good human beings that are, people first. I care who you are, not what you do. And I think people appreciate that when in the recruitment process, and even when they, come together, that you care about who they are first. So, but then when it comes to player construction, are you a good teammate? Are you going to put your ego, on the side? Team first, always for me. And then you go relentless, hard worker, someone that wants to be coached, wants to get better every day. And then you align this with the basketball skills that your coach is looking for. Ideally, right now, I don't want to say we're playing positionless basketball in W anymore, but I think the league is moving that way.
Yeah.
So are you able to find players that can move between the positions? And then for me, critical is like decision-making skills. Like I really look at the dexterity of the player. Like when they face the problem, how fast are they able to solve it?
Yeah.
And when they're tired, when they're under pressure, are you still making a good decision?
Yeah.
So those are all kind of little things that I look for in a player. Yeah. So hopefully
What are the non-negotiables for you too?
In a player or in
And
general?
staff.
I would say communication. Like you cannot do without communication. Then I would say team first. And authenticity. I want everybody to feel like they can bring their own self. They can speak up. They can express themselves, share ideas, kill ideas. You know, so that would be my 3.
Yeah, I think work ethic on top of those is incredibly important. Somebody who's understands what the goals are and what the objectives are, and can be honest and upfront about it. We need people who can create hard conversations, because sports is not easy. And sometimes you have to have hard conversations. 11 players and you have a team of 22 to 26 players. There are going to be players who aren't going to play. And so you have to be able to be honest with your players.
I think we're talking about the complexity of the position, but then it's also the complexity where you're hiring a head coach, and head coaches, especially in this day and age, need to win. So they're building a roster, whatever roster they need to do that. How do you navigate that?
Well, I think you're managing the short-term gain versus the long-term impact. Coaches are paid to win on Saturday, effectively, and that can leverage a different asset or a different issue that may be detrimental to the long-term build. And so your role as a general manager, sporting director, is to really ensure that there's long-term success, that there's a pathway to be successful over the long term. And sometimes that's leveraging the short term, or sometimes it's leveraging the long term. And it really depends on what the issue is. So it's a very complicated and sometimes very convoluted decision-making process where you have to make a very difficult decision for what you feel is the long-term benefit of the club.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, he said it best. Like, as much as you can be on the same page with the coaching staff on the philosophy of how you want to play, there's always those, things when coaches are being under pressure to win now versus front office trying to build for the future. So how do you navigate that, having those difficult conversations that always comes up? But it's, I think, a natural part of our job. And yeah, maybe audience doesn't understand that, but it definitely comes with every front office role.
Well, that's why they listen to those podcasts, because then you can understand it. Let's talk AI, because I think AI, we look...
Oh, it's a turn.
What did you say?
That was a turn.
Yeah. Difficulty from coaching into AI, which none of us know where we're going to end up. But I think it's important we address it and talk about, what are you excited about, and because there's so many opportunities there, especially in the movement of women's sports right now. And then what is the unknown that keeps you up at night? That's a big question. So
it is a big question, and we've talked about it before. Like, I don't think either of us has enough knowledge to kind of eloquently speak about what AI can currently do. I definitely see it as a powerful tool that can help us save time. Like, I know AI can kind of pull all this data and create reports in like 0 seconds. Mm-hmm. It took 3 hours for a person to kind of do this before. So it can collect a lot of data points. It can, flag players in different areas. But like you said, I strongly believe in the eye test, in what we see as humans as well. And what I'm mostly afraid about, that it's going to strip the sport of all the humans element of it. Yeah. I always say it's still a people's business. Like, it's all about a relationship. And not only that, like, I hate the idea of an app telling me how I feel in the morning, Like, I should wake up and know if I'm tired or not. Did I sleep well or not? The app shouldn't tell me, oh, today you're tired, So how does that influence the athlete if now the machines are telling them how they're feeling, how they're moving? I think we've already kind of lost touch with nature and everything. Now we're losing touch with our bodies. Yeah. And I'm afraid of that mostly.
That's a good one. Jeff?
Yeah, no, I agree with Vanja. I think AI is a tool, and how you use that tool differentiate the level of success. But there's an element that AI doesn't have that an individual can look at. And when you look at work ethic, that's not always measurable. And in terms of what that work ethic looks like, that's not always measurable in terms of an AI. So it's definitely a tool that you can use to your advantage, but how you use it is really the key.
Yeah, the other element of this is the athletes, right? This next generation, a lot of them communicate through looking down, and that human connection part, which we've all been on teams, like the teams that win the championships are the teams that are the most connected, the ones that have that like little thing that you never even have to talk about. But that comes through having hard conversations, meeting face to face, not commuting this way. That also kind of scares me, because how do we make sure we create the culture and the environment where we keep connected to the human being so that they can strive for that version of excellence?
Yeah, I mean, it's connective tissue, right? So the only time the players are really not on their devices is when they're training or when they're playing. That's when they're really true. And I'll say that of every team that I won a championship with, the one foundation was that you are willing to do whatever you can for the team, that you're willing to do whatever it takes for the player next to you. And that is a differentiator in any dressing room. It differentiates talent. It differentiates resources, facilities. If you've got people that you can believe in and that will believe in you, that makes a huge difference in terms of success.
Yeah.
I agree. And like, if I could speak from my experience in London Lions, like we went in with the staff educating players, like why not to use the phone when we're eating, when they're in the locker room during halftime. That was like a no-go for me. But it wasn't from the angle you can do it, but it was more educational angle. And I feel like our biggest success was then by the end of the season when we went for dinner, like all the staff members were on their computers working on their phones. If you look at the players table, no one had their phone in the head. They were all talking. And I think that's why we won at the end. And to me, that was my biggest or our biggest victory, not winning the Euro Cup. It was that part, like players connecting and having that relationship, that just emerged. It was,
I mean, the critical piece is not knowing a player's biography, where they've been. It's about knowing who they are, what's important to them, what motivates them, who they like to be around, who they don't like to be around, the things they like, the preferences, those things matter.
Yeah. I mean, that's the connection, right? Where if a player's in the pit, you've got to know your teammate well enough to be like, how to get them out. You've got to be able to have those real
or how to push them, how to push them further.
Exactly. It's so funny because I'm sitting here and we were right before we taped this. I was like, I love nerding out on the sporting side, right? Of like, us as athletes back in the day, that time of nothing, almost being bored, was when you connected the most, right? Like the long trips to overseas, sitting in the airport. Those are the moments that people don't understand. That's when the real magic happens and the connection happens. And I'm thinking about the performance center, right? We talk about that cafeteria area where you walk in and you're going to be able to just break bread, and the athletes are going to nerd out like we just did over there, but we're not really athletes anymore, right? Or are we? Tennis players?
We officially are.
Yeah.
Yes.
I heard you guys, you both play tennis now?
I mean,
not as well as Vanja.
we haven't had a match. That might be our next.
No, I think
when I get better.
Start with ping pong and work our way out.
Pickleball, then tennis. But the performance center, what I love about it is the idea that the athletes will break bread. You two will break bread. Our performance will break bread. Like, we really can move things forward in a space like you said, it's not just about the walls, but it's the conversations that we'll be able to have with the phones down. What excites you about that?
I go first?
Yeah.
Just the interactions, I think, and what can come out of it, like sharing the experience. I'm always impressed when I go and see other athletes perform. And I love to take our team, to see, ski jumpers or climbers, just to see what other athletes put their body through and what the experience is. So I think that's it's gonna accelerate the conversations and the experiences. And mostly excited, we were talking about doing research on female bodies in terms of injury prevention. There's not a lot of sports data or research on that. So how can we use both of our teams to kind of improve data points and research in that area?
Yeah, I think every athlete goes through adversity, and understanding how athletes get through adversity and become successful or learn from their failures is critical. That's the thing that pushes every athlete to understand that from multi-sport athletes. I think is going to be incredibly interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing what the conversations are.
Yeah.
It'll be very easy to spot which athletes are soccer players, which are basketball players. So that would be an issue.
Maybe
Some of the goalkeepers, yeah. And I'm looking forward to the games that'll be there as well. But I think the fact that there's just casual interaction. You talked about Steve Jobs putting the bathrooms in the middle of the floor so there would be these interactions. That's what we're hoping to create.
And they're going to end up showing up for each other in a way that we almost can't help them, right? Because those peer-to-peer conversations. So speaking about showing up, we talked about the importance of women's sports and having women not just at the executive levels, but the importance of seeing it to believe it and seeing it to make you feel like I could be that person. You're a woman in a high position, a very important position, but we've also talked about having women at all levels. You want to expand on that?
I feel like women deserve opportunity to grow organically, to be mentored, to be taught within the organization, and then tackle all the VP and executive roles. I think they're more prepared versus just appointing a woman to an executive role and then potentially her not being able to step up with, and then just say, see, a woman can do it, you know? So that's, to me, is always still like a kind of a topic that I think we need to tackle.
Yeah.
And I think we need to bring men into this conversation as well.
Right.
Like,
Thank you.
Yeah. You're back in the conversation. No, because up to my role with the Valkyries, all the positions I got were men opening doors. So I'm not saying men are not our allies, but every time we're discussing our problems and what we go through, we usually talk to ourselves. Mm-hmm. But I'm like, we need to bring them in so they understand what we're, dealing, and so they can help us better. Because I do think they want to help us.
Yeah, I mean, I told you I had goosebumps because at your press conference, the GM for the Valkyrie showed up, and I was like, this is women's sports. And there's this idea that it was scarcity, but now there's abundance if led in the right way. And Jeff, you are a massive ally. And we actually were talking about this when we were talking, and we were like Jeff. So we did say like you, and she didn't just say that for this. But the importance of men understanding the power of women, opening the door, helping them through them, but leading them to another set of heights. That pretty much summarizes how you are.
Yeah, look, it's important to be an ally. This is a women's club in a women's league, and so it's critical that we provide access and representation for women to build their careers, to provide opportunities for them long term. When we think about what is important in terms of how people are moving forward, this is a people issue. This is both men and women that is critical to be successful for. So we have to make sure that women have access and representation in leadership roles, in forming the philosophy of the club in terms of the key points. So I don't see it as a male and female thing. I think this is a really important thing for everybody.
Love it. Let's get into some hot topics.
Fantastic. I thought that's what we were just talking about.
The whole thing, an hour right now is a topic.
Well, because it's the insights, but it's also the hard decisions, right? And Jeff, I sent you a text the evening because there was a big trade that happened with Hina. She's beloved by all. We all here love her. But it was a hard decision. And nothing really prepares you to be a GM when there's a trade made. Talk us through that? Because I think people sometimes go at the GM and not understand the bigger picture. Yeah.
This is an example, I think, of the challenges that general managers, people in leadership positions have. So it's not the only one, but it's a good representation. Hina Sugita is one of the most beloved players here in Portland. Japanese international player, has really represented the crest for the Thorns for a number of years. And we felt it was important that when we were talking about her future, we wanted to make sure she was supported throughout the entire process. And she had a contract that would go through the end of next year. And so we began discussions with her and her representation about continuing the Thorns. I mean, our motto is once a Thorn, always a Thorn. And so we wanted to make sure that she was here for the long term. We got to a point, and this goes back to roster construction, where we had to be very disciplined. And we got to a point where we there was a gap, and we knew that we were at an impasse in terms of where we wanted to be, where she wanted to be. And at that point, we understood that there were two really important things we had to think about. One was what's right for the player. You know, what do we think is the best option for the player? And two, what's right for the organization? And we wanted to make sure those two objectives were met. And so and this was over the course of several months, when we talked to Hina and her representation, she had asked to explore opportunities. And so we wanted to support that. So if there was another opportunity that made better sense for her from a vocational standpoint or an economic standpoint, we wanted to make sure that we weren't just shipping her off for the best deal. We were putting her in a place to be successful. And we found an opportunity that represented that it was a good opportunity for her. She's moving to Los Angeles, and she's with 2 or 3 other Japanese internationals. She's with a person who brought her here to the league. And so we wanted to make sure we supported that pathway. But we also had a very good opportunity for the club that would bring in a player that would create more balance for us defensively, that would create an economic opportunity to bring in additional players over the long term. And so we just felt like, while the timing wasn't ideal or optimal, it was a win-win for both the player first and foremost and the organization.
And it's understanding too that in the CBA, the player does agree to the trade too, right?
Right. So that was one of the changes in the collective bargaining agreement with the players this year, that the player has to agree and consent to a trade. Mm-hmm. And so we couldn't have just sent Hina anywhere we wanted. Yeah. It was really down to the player to agree to this. And so when Hina, asked to look at opportunities, we wanted to support that and provide that consent and support that consent.
It's the hard decisions of the title, So CBA, let's talk about the CBA. Is there a CBA in the WNBA? Gromheim, is there a conversation around that?
Yeah, a little bit. Really? That I'm not allowed to talk about, so I don't know what direction you want to take this hot topic.
No, but I mean, it's the hot topic, and I think it's just given the insights of the difficulty of, we just talked about a trade, a CBA, we have a lot of free agents, and how do you navigate that with the pressures of Portland? Because again, we're that mid-tier, we're the unicorn, we're not the LA, the New Yorks, but our fan base, and we believe we are there because we have a club that's changed trajectory one side, and we already have over 14,000 deposits. In a small town like Portland, people care. So there's hot topics around all of that. So you just go wherever you want to go, girl.
No, I just want to say, because there's a lot of unknowns. So you have to be comfortable with unknown, just taking steps in the dark and just hope, something will come out on the other side. Mm-hmm. And I'm a firm believer, if you stick to your values, if you stick to your strategy, if you trust the people you've hired, something good will come out. There's no way you can mess that up, right? Yeah. And then you just go with we play with different scenarios now, just with the timeline. Is it going to be similar to last year, which means expansion draft in December? So we're going to have a team in December. Then we get ready for the free agency, and then the NCAA draft. Yeah. The worst case scenario we plan for, everything is glued together in March, April, and we have to knock it all out of the park in 1 month. So I think going through those scenarios kind of takes a little bit of, I guess, anxiety and, pressure out of it. But just, falling back to your values and your vision and your strategy, I think it's always the best way.
Okay, you guys have done well the hop talk. So, now people do this. Let's ask some rapid fire questions, right? You guys, you got like this. It's up in the air. Okay, how can you do that? Okay. We're going to start a little competition, GM versus GM, but not on this show. But anyway, this is rapid talk. Favorite holiday?
Christmas.
Oh, me too. Aww. But we won't spend Christmas together. Fun fact about you. How about where you were born, Jeff? You could go in that whole way.
Yeah, well, I don't know how fun that is. I mean, I was born in Switzerland,
Yeah.
born in Geneva, but I don't remember it.
You played for U.S. That's fun.
Yeah, my parents are both American, which is why I can't get Swiss citizenship. I didn't live there long.
Do you like chocolate?
Yeah, I love chocolate.
There you go. There you
Yeah,
go.
fun fact.
He thinks it's funny that I don't eat American chicken.
You don't eat American chicken? I know what you mean.
No,
I got you. I got you.
Explaining,
But that's okay.
I don't think the
viewers at home?
the listeners or viewers.
Can you explain?
I'd love to hear this.
American chicken?
Yeah.
We're not talking about a...
So we had dinner and I ordered chicken and she's like, I can't eat American chicken. I said, what's the difference between I won't, right?
Mm-hmm.
I just don't trust it. It's grown in 2 days. Just flip them up.
Watch this episode on YouTube so you can see
Steroids. The chickens don't move. They're not outside. So I just
Okay. All right.
It's cruel to the
But
animals.
do you like Halloween? Is Halloween new to you?
You dress up as a chicken?
No.
Because this is what you're gonna be.
Yes and no. So if you ask me if I dressed up as a kid, no. As an adult, potentially.
Okay. Favorite Halloween costume?
Favorite Halloween costume?
I was a zombie basketball player once. I don't know.
Oh, that was really creative, Vanja.
I think I was a crayon once.
Oh,
Yeah.
was that when you're in dad mode, or you actually just...
Yeah, a little bit of both.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hidden talent that no one in the office knows about.
I
I played a piano.
No.
play guitar.
Oh.
We have a band. I'm a singer.
Boom.
Well,
Where was that for?
We need a drummer.
I can do drumming. You might want me to do drumming after you've heard my voice. Best career advice you've ever received?
I will go with one of my favorite authors, Esther Perel. She always says, the quality of our relationships determine the quality of our lives.
Ooh,
That's a good-
boom.
That
Right, Slovenia.
I think the one that resonates with me is just enjoy the moment, enjoy the both good and bad.
That's a good one. Sports hero growing up.
easy, Michael Jordan.
23.
I mean, Gretzky was a big one just in terms of what he brought.
Interesting.
Are you saying Canadian just for me? You guys.
The great one.
The great one. Favorite podcast?
Besides this one?
Yeah.
No, just say it.
It was an episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Steve Bartlett.
Oh, good one. Darius.
Yeah. Simon Sinek's A Bit of Optimism.
Man, this is why we are all so... I love you guys. What's more nerve-wracking? First day as a player or first day as a GM?
Player. You don't know anybody. You don't know the organization. At least as a GM, you start with a sort of title that people have an expectation of. As a player, you have to live up to that expectation.
That's
every
true.
minute.
That's a unique perspective. Describe your leadership style in 3 words.
Leaders eat last.
Ooh.
Simon Sinek.
Oh,
Yes.
good one. All of these, I'm like, I like that.
Yes. Authentic, honest, and 3 words. Authentic, honest, and open.
What drives you now in 10 words or less?
Putting people in a position to be successful.
Okay. So you. What drives you right now in 10 words or less?
I want to make this right. That's like my
Ooh.
biggest goal.
That's great.
Yeah.
One thing you miss about being a player?
Everything. I mean, one of my coaches said, play as long as you can. And he was absolutely right. It's the best job in the world, being a player.
Yeah.
You work these incredibly long hours, 2 hours a day.
Food's made for you.
Yeah. It is just such a unique thing to represent, not just yourself, your family, but the community and the club. Like, you are a walking representation of what Portland is, what the community is. So it is a privilege. It's an honor, but it's an incredible job.
It is.
It really is.
You're making me miss it. And
I miss it every day.
Oh, I walk by the field and I'm like, no. But
I listen. I don't. I don't like having to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, making a flight to go cross country and play, and then come back and do that again. But I absolutely miss big games, World Cup games, playoff games, rivalry games. Like you can just feel it as a player. Like you want to walk in and put your boots back on and play that game. But you obviously know better. There's a reason you don't. It would take me 5 minutes to pull a hamstring.
No, it was like then you hit the floor. You're like, you can't do it anymore. But yeah, you're right. There's nothing. The adrenaline rush, the fulfillment.
They say you die twice as an athlete. You die when your life is over, but you also die when you retire, or I like to call it graduation. I mean, it's a thing. I think retirement is a negative word. I think you graduate when you finish schooling. You graduate. You don't retire. So I like to think of it as a graduation.
Love it.
But graduation is like something positive. I feel like you lose your identity. Like you have to reinvent yourself once you retire, right?
But that's the opportunity.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Call to action to our listeners. You each get
show up.
Mm-hmm.
Show up. Be there for women's sports. Be there for the Thorns. Be there for the Fire. Like showing up matters.
You heard it, guys. Show up. Sign up to our social media. Come out to our community outreach. Sign up for the tickets, season ticket deposits. Yeah, and be there at the Moda Center and Providence Park to support us.
Well, I love this time. Thank you for your time. I know this is busy for both of you. Thank you for showing up. And I think what people don't realize is how personal this is to the two of you. You know, like, and I hope today they got out of that it is personal and you're talking about people first. And that's like kind of the vision moving forward to be the best. Surround yourself with the right people and you'll do big things. And you too.
Well, we surrounded ourselves with a great person here.
Oh, thanks, guys. But really, like we get to do this, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I think we'll have a lot of success. And we're the only organization to do this together. So together we can do big things. Woo! What an episode. I walked away with so much. And, you know, I used to have this position, but seeing the two of them talk about the complexities of the position, the importance of empowerment and surrounding yourself with the right people, allyship from both men and then women understanding that like we've got to step into these roles and really own it. And most importantly, the call to action of showing up. Show up. Buy the tickets, go to the games, but most importantly, show up for these athletes so that they know that they matter and that they belong and just all of it. I mean, woo, there's so much going on in my brain right now, but I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks again for tuning in.